Hey everybody, the View from the Pew Sports Show. Mike is out this week, but excited to have Terry Pluto with us. You might know Terry, a longtime writer with the Cleveland.com, plain dealer, also with Akron Beacon Journal. He's written a lot of books, and I don't want to embarrass you here, Terry, but I read you in my college career, and you're one of the reasons why I decided to join this business. And it's fun to be a coworker with you now. So welcome, Terry. How's it going?
That does make me feel good when people say they did that and they wanted to get into it because it means that you did something that caught their attention and then continue to follow it. And coming up for you was probably more difficult than me because just as the old media landscape changed so much over the years, and uh, I respect those who figure out how to do it. Uh, in new media because I've picked up some stuff, but really my old skills have transferred over. Where if I were starting now, um, I'd really have to basically go back to not journalism school because I didn't go there anyway, but to this is how the world works.
Yeah, it's wild for me. I'm 51, so when I started, it was still in the breadth of the print time where everyone was into the print. And I remember probably 2 or 3 years in my professional career, they ended up starting internet, and they were like, "Okay, at the end of the day, just post 2 or 3 stories from the whole paper," and it
Yeah,
was kind of an afterthought. And obviously now, it's the breadth of what we're doing now, so it's totally different to see what happened. Well, I definitely want to talk about what we think about the industry and that, but let's first start talking a little sports, what's happening currently.
hmm
Last night, Super Bowl, Seahawks over the Patriots. What did you think about that? Did that surprise you at all?
I didn't watch much of the game to be honest. I mean, and I get to the point where um, people say, "Would you want to go cover the Super Bowl?" I'll go when the Browns go,
Yeah,
because in terms of going with 1,000 other media guys writing about two teams I don't care a whole lot about, doesn't really do it for me. And really, the thing now when you talk about what do people want to read about, I mean, the last 3 weeks, actually 2 weeks, if you really think about it, Jose Ramirez got a lifetime contract from the Guardians.
Mhm.
The Browns finally hired a coach with Monken. The Browns lost Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator, and the Cavs made 3 trades. That's
Yeah,
where, if you're in doing my job, is a lot more important and a lot more of my energy poured into, other than Seattle and New England. I watched part of the game, but I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Uh, I was more interested. Simply, I had taped James Harden's first game. I wanted to look at it again to see how he looked, and just the fact that now the Browns, the Juju Schuster say the Browns is the Browns, and something's always up with them, and
hmm
now they're looking for coordinators and all that kind of stuff. So that's really where I want to concentrate. I know that's what people want to read. That is one advantage of the internet. You have an idea, at least the people online, what they're reading.
yeah. Well, I guess the big Browns correlation to make of that was something that was hanging out there. Mike Vrabel
Mhm.
was, I think, last year was a consultant with the Browns, and sometimes people were like, we had this guy here. Why did we let him go? And obviously, the easy answer for someone who's not in the building is to say, hey, look, they decided to stay with Kevin Stefanski at the time. It was what was a well, it is what it is, I guess.
Well,
What?
here, Chris, on that. So you have to put the context. So in 2023, the Browns were 11-6, went to the playoffs,
Mhm.
and Stefanski's coach of the year. 2024, that's when Vrabel came in as a consultant. Uh, it was a disastrous year, but there was all kinds of Watson problems and everything else that year. So to hire Vrabel, first of all, you would have to fire Stefanski 1 year after he had used 5 quarterbacks and gone to the playoffs and been coach of the year. And that would have been after 2 years, would have been after 1 year of that.
Mhm.
Secondly, you would have to have had Vrabel take the job. He may not take the job because he knows he's going to get other opportunities sitting out. That's like right now. I mean, Sean McDermott and Tomlin are sitting out because they know I'll just wait a year and people will come to me. So there's those are the two people. Well, you don't let them out of the building. Was this like a bad used car dealer where somebody takes your
Yeah,
keys? And they're
yeah.
not going to give them back until you make a car trade. It doesn't work that way. And there is a certain amount of kind of loyalty among these guys. It's like, this guy gave me this consultant's job. Well, I could sit out, still be in the game while I'm fired. And what? Then I'm going to push him out? Whether it's your hometown team or not, I mean, that looks a little low. And I'm in the little bit that I'm aware of Rabel, I don't think that kind of works in his thought process. Thirdly, the owner, Robert Kraft, loves Rabel, absolutely loves him. And that's a big part of, if you're going to go somewhere, if the owner's in your corner, you want to go there. I wrote a longer story on that. I just don't see how it was going to happen. Even
Yeah.
had they decided to fire Stefanski, that doesn't mean Vrabel's going to take that job at all. He was going to be a free agent. I mean, he had a bunch of teams wanting to talk to him.
Well, and like you said, I think there was mutual interest. He always liked, New England too. I'm
Yes.
sure he would have considered Cleveland if that became an option. But I
And
think
no,
New
but
England.
Chris, seriously, how does it? You talk a little bit about faith and all that, and I am too. How does that become an option when the fact that the guy who allowed you to come in as a consultant, then they decide, oh, we're just going to push him out and give you the
Yeah,
job, especially when you have other options. I mean,
right.
granted, there are some folks that would probably say, I don't care one way or the other. You get the job, that's the way the world goes. But I don't think Vrabel is one of those people. So to me, this is one of those hypothetical things that people haven't thought past an initial reaction of, uh, I'm a Browns fan, I'm hurting. Maybe Mike Vrabel would have won some games and made me feel better.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the update on that.
Yeah.
That's good. So the Browns ended up picking Todd Monken, kind of more of a veteran coach. He hasn't been a head coach yet, but he's had definitely experience with the Ravens running an offense. Do you think? What do you think overall of it? You think it's the best choice? Did you have somebody else in mind if it was up to you?
Well, I would have been fine with Schwartz too. He would have been my first pick, but then you would have been trying to hire somebody like Todd Monken to be your offensive coordinator. And that was not, for example, Monken was not going to take a job here as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah,
Uh, he was going to go to New York with Jim Harbaugh. I'm sorry, John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh was holding the job open for him until he decided what he wanted to do in Cleveland. Um, and as to these, I mean, I remember getting these emails about Nate Shieldhouse from people who probably never heard of Nate Shieldhouse until like 2 weeks ago. I mean, can we get real? And
hmm
so your answer is you want to take a team that's been 8-26 in the last 2 years, a team that, and hand that over to a guy who's been in the NFL only 2 years longer than you have, Chris,
hmm
and had called plays 1 year at Iowa State for Matt Campbell. So that's who you want to give a Browns rebuild to. And frankly, if you're Andrew Berry or some of these guys, do you really want to put your job in his hands? The answer, I think, is no. So
right.
then you're looking at veteran coaches, and I think they believe they thought Monken is either going to Monken or Schwartz, one of the old hands, and they thought that Monken's the way to go. It'll be interesting to see what Monken does. His head coaching experience, he had 3 years at Southern Miss. It was 0-12 when he went there. Then he won one game, and I think then he won like 5 games. And then his last year he was 9-5, which is a huge year at Southern Miss. And then he went to the NFL as offensive coordinator with the Tampa Bay Bucks. But Monken's always wanted to be an NFL guy. And even after he was here with the Browns in 2019, and he didn't do much when he was a coordinator here, Freddie Kitchens was sort of doing everything and not doing anything well. But in 2020, he was hired, Monken, by Georgia. And at that point, that was the first time, Chris, that where now you see these NFL coordinators going into the college ranks, for big money. Matt Patricia at Ohio State. There's been a bunch of others, but Monken was the first one of those that they went after, and they made him the highest paid assistant in college football. Georgia did at $2 million, and he was there for 3 years and won 2 national titles. Could have stayed there forever, but his long-term goal was always to coach in the NFL. And then John Harbaugh offered him a chance to go to Baltimore, and he went there the last 3 years. So that's his background. And really, I mean, I was getting emails from people as if this was Bozo the Clown they heard. I'm like, did you even look at where he worked and what he did? This is an
Yeah,
accomplished offensive coordinator. Now, being head coach of the Browns is no bargain. And we don't know if he'll be any good at it at all. But as one executive told me, if Todd Monken were 40 years old and you saw that resume, you wouldn't let him out of the building if he's applying for the job. I mean, it's exactly
Right.
what you would want.
Yeah, it almost seems similar to the whole Mike McCarthy thing with the Steelers. You
Mhm.
go for a veteran guy that can help your offense out than just a newbie, and it seemed to be that's kind of what the Browns did. I'm
You
curious
know,
about,
Chris, when we talk about it depends on your situation.
yeah,
The Steelers are an established product, but they haven't had a losing record in 19 years or whatever it
yeah,
is. Cleveland has not had back-to-back winning seasons since the late 80s. I mean,
yeah,
they're diametrically opposite. You
right,
could bring a shield house into Pittsburgh if you really like him, think he's the guy. You're putting him into a place where they've won a lot of games. They know how to support their coach. You don't have to rebuild the whole infrastructure. That's not Cleveland. In fact, that's oftentimes what happens is a young coach just gets hired at the wrong place. And whereas, but I think even with Pittsburgh decided we want to keep this going and we're going to, go to McCarthy. I would, I would rather have had Todd Monken than Mike McCarthy. I'll tell you that. I always thought McCarthy was just okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so anyway,
Well, I've covered the Steelers for a while too. It seems like the Steelers
okay,
like their veteran guys, and
yeah.
to me, from people I've talked to, that's kind of why they went
Well,
McCarthy.
but when you go back to who was the coach before
Yeah,
Mike Tomlin, you talk about a thin resume,
yeah,
defensive back coach, and I forgot whether it's 1 year or 2 years as a defensive coordinator in Minnesota. It was no more than 2. He's 34 years old. You know, I I remember it's almost like, who is this guy?
yeah,
There but he came in after Bill Cowher, correct? If I'm
yeah,
and he came into it already they were established.
yeah.
And so that helps. Of course, and it took a while. He fell into Roethlisberger, but it's just easier to go to. I mean, for example, Minter, who's taken over in Baltimore for John Harbaugh, it's a much better situation because he had coached there before. He'd been in the NFL for several years, and he's going to a team that knocks out 10 wins like it's nothing.
Well, it seems like if you look at last night's Super Bowl, if you have a good coach and you've got a quarterback to go with them, that's half
Mhm.
your battle. The Browns, Shadur Sanders. Obviously, we've got a taste of him. It's probably hard to say if he's definitely the guy or not, but it seems like, and you've written about this, like the search when you talk about the search for the Browns quarterback and everything. It seems like the future is going to be based on, is it Monken and Sanders, or do the Browns have a plan in the near future of bringing that other um, quarterback in there? Who knows if they'll will or not? That's the $1 million question of the Browns. It seems like.
Well, of course, I could say to you, Chris, 2 years ago, who would you say if I told you Sam Darnold's winning a Super Bowl?
Yeah, yeah,
Even going into this past year, he had a big comeback year at Minnesota. Remember, he was terrible in the playoffs. Uh,
yeah,
but sometimes what you also have is you have some people who are been in the league long enough and they begin to figure it out, just like Baker Mayfield has at Tampa Bay. And
hmm
so it's the other. There is some feedback on my end, Chris. Are you hearing like this whooshing?
I'm hearing you great. So
Okay, great.
yeah,
All right, as long as that is okay. So anyway, the point being on the quarterback thing is two factors for Monken. Obviously, you need the quarterback to be good. Whether Shador, they decide to go back and try I would bring in a veteran just to at least compete with them or something. They never really did give Kenny Pickett a shot. I'm not high on
yeah,
Kenny Pickett, but at least he's played some games. Um, and what defensive coordinator does he get?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, can you still unlock Miles Garrett? Obviously, Garrett's good enough where he's going to be fine. But
No, but what you need is somebody that's where the talent is on the team right now. It's on the defensive
yeah,
side. And if you're going to, I write this often, the Browns have to be watchable, Chris.
yeah,
You're putting out this terrible product year after year. Not only were they awful the last 2 years, 8-26, if you over those 2 years, you add it all up, they scored the fewest points in the NFL. So that's part of the reason, by the way, they went for Monken. They figured this is so bad, we got to bring in a guy here who can help that immediately. But you have to put together a team that people can watch. I mean, remember how much fun it was in 23 to go 11-6 with Flacco at the end and that. I mean, you knew they weren't going to go real far in the playoffs. It was entertaining. It was fun.
Yeah.
But the other, so that's one of the things I'm going to kind of start hitting them hard on. You got to put a product out there that is legitimate.
Yeah, it was hard to find in the past year or two, definitely. I want to touch on a couple other sports, and let's talk journalism, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Some quick notes. The Cavs, obviously, a big, a couple trades, most notably the trade for James Harden. What do you think overall? You think it's a good thing, or?
Overall, I like what they did because they did upgrade the talent. I really like the DeAndre Hunter trade for Ellis and for Schroeder. Those two guards can defend. They're tough. They really help. Lonzo Ball, I think, has lost his confidence since he's come back from that last devastating knee injury and surgery. So getting him out of there and DeAndre Hunter, they both are struggling. The Harden trade is going to be very interesting. I was against it, not because I like Garland. I believe Garland's got injury problems and that, but I mean, it is the fourth time he's asked for a trade in the last 6 years. It's interesting. They're now trying to couch it. It's like he and the Clippers got together and just decided this would be a wonderful thing to do. Okay, fine, whatever. You want to say part of it too was he also decided that he wasn't thrilled the fact that the Clippers wouldn't fully guarantee his contract next year. It was like $44 million. It was guaranteed $13 million. And he's, as a one NFL NBA person who knows James pretty well, he says, James is very good on your team until he's not. No, things go along fine, like right now. So, but generally his history is when he goes to a new team. I mean, why is a guy who's going to be considered among the top 75 players in the NBA bounce from team to team to team? There's something going on here.
Right.
But when he goes to a new team, he tends to play very well. And I think that the Cavs looked at it this way. Donovan Mitchell's been in the league. This is his 8th year. Been in the league 8 years. He's never got past the second round of the playoffs. This upcoming summer, he has a chance to sign an extension. They want to sign him to it. They want to get him past that second round. And if Harden comes in here and he's in the right frame of mind, this gives them a chance to do that. And then if there's fallout from James after the season, frankly, they'll deal with it then. In the meantime, they got rid of Garland with these significant toe injuries, and he has 2 more guaranteed years on his contract. So that's what they were thinking. This is a short-term move. We'll see how it works out. But I just know this: when you have Harden, he's going to ask for a trade or something.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't go well, he can make it pretty ugly on the team. So that's it. But short-term, I understand why they did it.
Yeah, and you got flexibility after the year. So if it all goes
well, it'll be part of that year. Now, did they make him? What we don't know, he had approved that trade.
Yeah.
Did they make him a verbal promise about next year?
Yeah, I've heard that a couple places. Which
I mean, why would he otherwise?
Yeah. So, he's 36. Hopefully, he doesn't get like a 5.
That's a long one. So that's, I mean, and I understand when you're that age, you want to get as much in the NBA as much as you can. Now, it's like one person who's very close to the Clippers told me is that I used this quote in there, and he's it's a source close to the team, said, unlike some of these guys, James likes to play basketball. I started to laugh. He says, look at him. He plays 70-some games a year. He's in his middle 30s. He plays 35, 36 minutes a game. The rest of these guys are load management and all this other stuff. And again, he was the other one and also said, he's fine until he's not. He said, but that part of it, when he's going well, is significant and is very helpful.
Yeah, and the other night, I mean, they played the Kings, which is a bad team, but he ran in there without practice and he just played. Some people wouldn't do that. Some people would say, "Hey,
I wouldn't." And also just the way he was really, especially early on, trying to get the ball to Jared Allen, move the ball around. That was impressive. When he's on his game and he wants to really facilitate and be a pure point guard. He's good at it. Now you could look at when I look back at that tape. Defensively, he's really bad. He really
Yeah.
is. I mean, he just doesn't get back on defense and kind of loses guys. But if you're scoring 25 points and 8 assists and that, and it's an upgrade over Garland, who's horrible defensively.
Yeah.
He was bad before the injury and horrible, and just isn't as good in the other areas. I mean, I was kind of amused. They're talking about James Harden's a big guard, and that's going to help them defensively. Okay, fine, to a degree. Where you're really looking at it is he's going to be available, and he is much better at getting the ball to Jared Allen and the big guys than their other guards, and that'll take a burden off. And also with Garland out, Donovan doesn't have to bring the ball up the court all the time.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned earlier, and again, before we get into just general journalism stuff, Jose Ramirez gets the long lifetime contract. It's hard to say anything bad about Jose Ramirez, and looking through the history of the Guardians and the Indians, sometimes when guys get to a certain level, they're like, okay, get me out of here. So I applaud the fact that, Jose Ramirez wants to stay and the Guardians pay him money. But, it's going to take a lot more than Jose Ramirez to get over the hump. And, the Guardians got other problems with the Class A thing and everything else. I wonder how they're going to be able to put a team around Ramirez. I mean, good for Ramirez, good for the Guardians keeping him, but you need more than Ramirez to get to where they want to be.
Of course, but if you don't have Jose Ramirez, you're even farther away from where you want to be.
Sure.
I mean, there. And if Jose wanted, it's interesting. It gets complicated how that contract's paid out with $70 million, but basically he's just getting $15 million a year, which as baseball salaries keep going up and up and up. It really is a bargain, and they know that the last couple of years may not be the best for Jose on that contract. Right. They know that. It reminds me of one GM. I can't remember what player it was he had, but he gave the guy. In fact, it was a 7-year contract. This was many years ago. And he said, yeah, the last year or two, I really regretted it. But boy, those first 5 years, man, we're in the playoffs. I got a guy in the middle of my lineup. We're relevant. And I could build around him. Well, that's what Jose gives the Guardians to do. And people I hear that and I wish they would spend more money and all this stuff. But the fact is, in the last 10 years, they have the 4th best winning percentage in baseball. That's a fact.
Yeah.
New York's Dodgers are 1, New York's 2, Houston's 3, Cleveland 4, and Milwaukee 5. So you have like 2 smaller markets with the other 3. Secondly, they've won the Central Division in 3 of the last 4 years. And we were talking about the Browns not being watchable or whatever. I mean, the Guardians are watchable. Now, it's a hard way how they're doing it, and they just seem not interested at this point in going to get a veteran bat. I mean, I was talking to Mike Chernoff for a story last week, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to go with the young guys. And frankly, every time he said, and which is true, you almost have to go back to maybe Mike Napoli, where they went and got a veteran to come in here in a short term. He did well, but the whole list of Eddie Rosario and Carlos Santana and several other players like that, they just busted out. So
yeah. Oh, you take a chance. You never know.
Yeah, Josh Bell was another one. Right, I still would bring in a guy in, but let's put this one: when they go shopping in that aisle, they don't do very well.
Yeah.
Sometimes other teams do, but they don't.
Yeah.
Mike Zunino. I mean, now the names are starting to come back. I'm up to like 5 names now.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem to happen for them. I really thought that they would try to address their offense like they did starting pitchers a year ago. Remember, they made those big deals where they traded Jimenez for Ortiz, what ended up falling apart, and Josh Naylor for Slate Ciccone. Now, you could argue you should have kept Naylor, but regardless, they targeted young starting pitchers that they wanted, and both of those guys are talented, and they went out and made trades to get them. But this year, I thought there would be some young hitters or outfitters somewhere, and they could use maybe some of they have depth with young starting pitching, or maybe somebody else on their team that they wanted to move, but they didn't. I mean, there was not even one good trade rumor about the Guardians all winter. I can't even think of a trade rumor.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of it was the short relievers that they signed.
Yeah, right. Those are just guys
like,
there.
bring
But
them
I mean,
back.
you didn't hear them trying to do. You trade Josh Naylor. I mean, that's a big trade. Or Jimenez. I mean, that's a big trade. And you're targeting these young guys, and of course Ortiz decided to blow his career up. Listen, but did you know that Emmanuel Clase, by the way, is a prominent figure in the world of Dominican cockfighting? I did not know this till this day.
I didn't know either.
It's like
It's been a lot of good reporting.
And now Ortiz's defense, this is funny too. They don't want to be tried with the same way as Clase. They're like, oh no, we're getting far away from that. As my friends in law enforcement call it the Soddit defense. Some other dude did it. That's kind of SODDIT. So you do that. And if I were Ortiz, I probably would do the same thing. But I was how they ended up going through losing 2 pitchers to gambling like it's 1919 all over again, with the Black Sox, and still won the division when you're 15 games out. I don't know how they did that. They better not count on trying to do that again.
Well, and you raise a good reminder. I mean, they don't have the talent that other teams did, and the fact that they're which like fourth over the past couple of years is amazing.
10 years, fought
10 years.
the last
even better.
10 years, and they've
just
won the Central 3 of the last 4 years. I mean, I get because I hear from fans I like this. Well, we know even though it doesn't win, we know Jimmy Haslam really wants to win because he quote spends unquote, and we know the Guardians don't want to win because Dolan doesn't spend. So the team that wins doesn't want to win, and the team that wants to win doesn't win by that logic.
Yeah, I know. I'm hoping for they've got some of these young guys like with DeLauder and these other players.
I will tell you, I saw DeLauder in I think it was 23, and let me see. Yeah, excuse me, it's 24. Anyway, he had just signed. I saw him in a doubleheader, Lake County Class A. And first of all, physically, he looks like this is what a big league at that point right fielder looks like. 6'2", 210. He played at James Madison. When he wasn't hitting, he was a closer. He threw 91 miles an hour, 92.
Wow.
So I saw him remember he made a great throw in the playoffs. He cut a ball off in the thing and threw a rocket to third. Well, I saw him do that in the doubleheader. He was playing right field and he fired a bullet, from the right field corner to home plate. I'm like, wow, and then you could see he got a couple hits. It wasn't like he pounded the ball, but he just looked like a hitter. He had the stats. The question, he would have went in the top 10 or even top 5 had he not had the foot problem coming out of school. So, I mean, now that's one guy you just want to put him in there. You don't even think about it. Just let him play and see if he stays healthy. And they have some other guys like that. Valero, they've loved forever. He's another guy that's always been hurt. They have a big question. What do you do with Quan? That they're going to keep him as for now, but these are just the way they do it. If you look at, Tampa Bay does it this way. We mentioned Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping is that the Dodgers spending all this money, Chris, even outraging the Yankees, will finally get the owners to have enough backbone to go after some sort of salary cap, just like the other leagues have.
Yeah.
Of some sort. I mean, and on top of it, the other thing, I wrote about this on Sunday. The Cardinals talked about how they were with FanDuel or whatever it is, that they lost that TV contract. So they're going with the MLB streaming service. They said it's going to cost them at least $20 million less than what they got. So think about what happened to the Guardians a year ago. They were on FanDuel. They lost that deal. They went to MLB streaming. So they probably took that $20 million hit a year ago.
Oh, okay.
Well, this is a big deal. So that's another thing that hopefully will entice these and force these owners to say, we can't rely on these lucrative, especially in your middle markets, these lucrative cable contracts anymore. They're going away. Now, you have New England and NESN, as it's called, New England Sports Network, or in New York, those are always going to be there. And the Dodgers, remember, have a huge media presence in Japan.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that is a big revenue shot. I was working at a Columbus TV station. It was wild. They actually subcontracted some of the Blue Jackets games down there, and they were paying money for that. So
yeah,
it's like a different world for these teams to figure out. Okay, and I know in Cleveland they do that too. If KYC has some of the subcontract games, it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the future with
yeah,
that.
but those are not very lucrative at all. Those subcontracts. It's a better than nothing deal for a
Oh,
team.
but it's not a high price by any means.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the reason all those like they were Bally's or FanDuel or whatever that thing kept changing its name, they wildly overpaid
Yeah.
these rights fees because they thought the world would never change. But they had no clue streaming was coming and that kind of stuff. So that's how they got into trouble and bankruptcy and etc.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I want to talk journalism. Like you said, there's a billion things going on in Cleveland sports right now, but faith is something that's always been important to me. I know it's important to you. It frustrates me personally because I've worked with Gannett, a couple other places, and it seems like overall, and I don't want to knock journalism, but faith reporting hasn't been as emphasized, shall we say, as other places. And I've really enjoyed reading your column of yours with the Beacon and now Cleveland.com. It's got to be good that they still let you do that. And I know Cleveland.com's doing a good job with that too. What's it like just keeping up that faith column? I know your bread and butter is more over your career than sports, but faith is definitely something that's really important as well.
Well, I've been writing. It started in 2000 when I was at the Beacon Journal, and Regina Brett was the general columnist at the Beacon Journal, and the Plain Dealer hired her, so she left the Beacon Journal to go to the Plain Dealer as a general columnist. And the editor there, named Jan Leach, a good friend of mine, and also my wife Roberta, took us to breakfast for talking. All of a sudden, she says, "Would you like to be the general columnist and take Regina's place?" And right away, I said no, because I have not seen it really work well with the sports columnist becoming that. Besides, the nice thing about sports is, by the way, I don't love sports. I like sports. I love to
Mm-hmm.
write. But
Mm-hmm.
sports, first of all, you have built-in readership. You have
Yeah.
drama, conflict, something. You got winners and losers, and people want to be traded. Just think of what we just talked about the last 2 weeks. Todd Monken comes, Jim Schwartz goes, Jose
Yeah.
stays, and the Cavs make 3 trades. We didn't forget the Super Bowl. We got all that going on here. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can't find stuff to write off of that, you should be fired immediately. So,
Right. Right.
but in a general column, this is kind of hard. Well, it's almost like if I were to tell you, write a story about what you did this weekend. It doesn't have to be great, but something, as opposed to write a story about anything you want. When you confine it tighter, it's actually easier to do that. So I turned it down, but then we were talking about things, and she knew that Roberta and I did jail ministries and stuff, so we were telling some stories about that. And then she said, "Well, what do you think of our religion page?" Because we actually had one back then. We had Jim Carney was a writer. He's Patrick Carney's father from the
Oh, okay.
but he would do like, there's a new rabbi or this church is having this fundraiser. It's nice stuff. But then they would run these wire columns, and it was like, the split in the Presbyterian church or gay vicious versus this. No, they really were politics
Mm-hmm.
more than they were quote unquote religion or faith. And so I began talking about, there's another form of faith writing out there that you sometimes see, which I had there. And I just said that it's like when you feel like you're praying and there's no answer, or when you feel like it's more like, as the original account was called Faith in You, or Everyday Faith. And she said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then would you want to do it? I said, "Maybe, depends upon that." And I heard nothing for 6 months. So I thought, well, that's so much for that. And then she came up and asked me to write a couple of them. So I did. And that's what started it, just basically doing it. I think the fact a sports writer does it, Chris, is different than if it was a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, because I'm not on the quote unquote the payroll for that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of times my topics come from emails I get from readers or conversations I have. But I come from a clear Judeo-Christian perspective. I told them that this is where I am. This is who I am. And I've never had, whether at the Beacon Journal, and then when the Plain Dealer recruited me to come in 07, I really wanted to go because I knew the Beacon Journal was in financial trouble big time. And I said, but I got Faith Count's got to come with me. And they, oh, that's fine. And that was it. I think they just
Yeah.
wanted me. At that point, the internet was starting. I knew I'd bring in going and knew I'd bring in some hits. So that's how it came about. And then it would seem like the Plain Dealer had lost interest in it. I was writing just a couple times a month. And then, and you needed like 2 bloodhounds, a GPS, and a map to find where they put it in the paper. It was liable to be behind the funnies. It could have been anywhere.
Right.
And then,
Right.
then the pandemic hit in 20, and they needed stuff. And Tim Warsinski was the editor there, and he talked with Chris Quinn. They go, "Can you write one of these every week? People are struggling and suffering." And so they did. Then suddenly, especially in the actual print edition, they put it on the front of the Metro page every Sunday. So I've been doing it every week since then, since 20. And it is the most challenging thing I do most weeks because the write about anything you want, as opposed to, off once in a while something off the news, but for the most part, that's it. And I got to rely on feedback from readers and things. But I think it gives, I mean, I would say half of the people who write me say, I don't go to church or synagogue regularly, but this is pretty interesting stuff. And that, of course, that's how it ought to be. Faith ought to be touching people where they live, helping
Yeah.
them, you know, it's not a magic thing. Psalm 23 doesn't say I had to go through the shadow of the valley of shadow of death. You don't get a helicopter to go over it. And so if you
Yeah.
write about people going through things, I think it helps them connect.
Yeah, and I like to. It's so easy. The low hanging fruit right now is like talking about politics and faith and everything, and I like how you don't go there because I know there's interest in it, but it frustrates me to talk about a lot, and I like how you deal more with the
I
day
just
to
like
day.
I don't do politics. You know what I learned to do, Chris? And then somebody will say something again to me. I go, I don't do politics, even in the conversation with somebody I don't know. And then
Yeah,
finally I go, look, that's it. I don't do politics. And
yeah,
then you start to laugh. And so I had a couple people go, I'm going to start doing that. I said, it makes it easier. And the
yeah,
next thing you know, we're talking about elder care, or we're talking about the Browns, or we're talking about something else, because there's no, Chris, there's more rational discussion on sports talk, which is a scary thought,
yeah,
than politics, because people don't come in with a totally preconceived notions. And if you bring up, like we're talking about right now, Todd Monken, good idea, bad idea. It's not a blue state, red state. I got to stay in my box to make a call. I'm like, well, I don't know. Is this guy any good? Or maybe I should look at this,
yeah,
as opposed to, oh, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a blue state, I'm this. No, it's like, well, do you, or you say somebody like Nick Chubb. I mean, if somebody doesn't like Nick Chubb, go home. I mean,
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
come together there. So that's the other reason I kind of like sports. Is actually, while it's fanatics and it's nuts, but it's saner than politics.
Well, and shying away from the political part of your
Yeah.
religion reporting makes you more relatable because
Mhm.
if you're sitting there yelling about one side or the other, it
Oh yeah.
just I'm going to pull my hair out, and I'm sure many other people reading
My
it
hair's been
would do
long
that too.
gone. Well, I mean, I wrote a column this past week of when you hear that voice
Yeah,
that says you're not measuring up. When you hear the voice, you screwed up and you'll probably do it again. It's the negative voices that we hear. And I remember early I started working through this column about the negative things. And I actually kind of even heard the voice that was sort of a dumb column. I'm like, before so I just put that in. I said, now, right now I'm feeling maybe this
yeah,
is kind of a dumb column. And the fact is everybody deals with that to some extent. And I think that should come out. In fact, I've asked readers then, well, how have you dealt with this, or what do you hear? And I'm starting, and sometimes you hear your parents' voice. Um, your daddy went to jail. You're going to be the same way, or you know, your parents left you with somebody else, and nobody will ever be there for you. All these things, and see that takes you way out. And how can God help you get through that? Through that, not over that. I'm running for. It's funny. It's like a guy wrote me an email. He said, all you do is write about these people going through pain. If that's Christianity, you can have it. And I'm like, you're going to be in pain either way, buddy.
Yeah.
And somebody, when I was on a spiritual quest about 30 years ago, a Vietnam vet who was kind of helping me through it, and he had a small church in rural Wayne County and that, and he owned a meat business. And I was saying, he goes, Terry, you don't get it, do you? He said, life is going to be hard either way. You're going to go through it with God or without God. It's going to be hard. So, how do you want to go through it? That is like one of the biggest parts of the gospel expressed in contemporary terms.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Terry, you froze up a little bit. I'm wondering.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was quiet. I was waiting for you to speak.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. I appreciate it. And you've been very kind for your time. I want to ask finally about journalism, and I know we could talk about this probably for the next 50 hours, but where do you, maybe simply, and we can always talk about this another time, but where do you think we're at? Like I was telling you, I'm 51. My first job was with the Alliance Review. I remember they were cutting and pasting, copy to a big board, and then we made our pages that way. And now, I'm with cleveland.com. I'm a trending reporter, so literally I'm just sitting there writing about everything from news, sports, entertainment, just to see what gets the clicks. And obviously there's value in that for keeping us alive and keeping us a business. What do you think about all the changes? It's been overwhelming.
Do you want to work in the business or not? It's as simple as that. And that's a question I ask myself. Do you want to work in the business or not? And the answer is, I love to write. This is a medium to write. Cleveland.com, unlike many other places, has figured out, at least in the short term, how to make some money off of this.
Yeah.
We're not laying off 300 people like the Washington Post. They've actually hired. When did you get hired?
Oh, a couple months ago. Yeah, 3 months now.
That's the point. They've actually hired people of late.
Yeah.
And then you look at things like the Washington Post. Oh, gee, let's get rid of our sports department. Well, one of the biggest drivers of revenue for us and these other places is your sports department. I mean, what do you go for a walk, buddy, whoever came up with that one. But if you don't pay attention to sports and that, so it's going to keep changing. You're going to have podcasts and all these other things, but people still want the information. And I think if you could make sure, like when, for example, like what you will hear, this is how it works in big time sports. So oftentimes you'll hear ESPN has a thing that James Harden's getting traded first. Okay. What happens is oftentimes the reporters for ESPN are actually working for the same agencies that represent the players. So in other words, they get the news breaking first. That's the one change. But who's going to tell you how James Harden fits into the Cavs? Was this a good idea? Was this a bad idea? How does it matter? We've got to own the story, as opposed to, okay, we don't quote unquote get it first, but we'll tell you what it means and why it's good or why it's bad and how to watch it and everything else. That's how we're going to survive.
And I'm old school like anybody else is, but I look at where I love the fact that right now, I looked at our screen, you could tell what stories do well. Where back in the print days, you write something and maybe you get a letter from somebody or email from somebody. You don't know. I can look right now and tell you what's doing well in Cleveland.com. And I kind of like that feedback because now I know what stories I write and you write that are hitting with readers. And what,
not everything should be aimed at getting hits, but some of it has to be. And you're in, like you said, I forgot what is exactly the name of it. What's your job?
Trending reporter.
Trending, right? What's trending?
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Because the reason it's trending. And then there are other things that could be done. But I mean, it turned out for me, the internet, with being older, actually was help for job security because they could look at, Terry's drawing in this many hits. And then On top of that, they could look at it and see how many of the stuff that I write becomes paid subscriptions, and that's a big, so that's been good job preservation for me. But it does help me. But it's interesting when I've seen stuff like when I write something on, say, John Carroll or Mount Union or that, it will do better than Cleveland State or Akron.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
And I love the fact, like you said, Washington Post sports department gone. New York Times kind of wrapped up their sports department with the Athletic. But I look at it, and we have a huge sports department. And
Yeah.
if you look at it, Cleveland sports has not been that well. It's one thing if you say every team up here is winning titles. Some of these teams have been very bad over the years.
Because
And I
sports,
love,
yeah, because Chris, sports is divergent from real life, and people are looking for that.
well, in Columbus, some of our sports down here, like the Crew or Blue Jackets, people don't read the stories. Up here, and again, it helps that people like you and Mary Kay
Right.
and other
No,
people.
they're looking for stuff. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, um, like I said, it's diversion. A lot of now, this is where the internet comes into play. I would say at least a third of my emails come from people out of state.
Oh wow.
They are Clevelanders or Northeast Ohio, Akronites or whatever, living in Washington, D.C., or living here or living there, and they just cannot get enough of it. So
Good.
where
Good.
before they couldn't get a paper, or sometimes you could get one in some sort of 4 days late somewhere, but here you get it right away, and
Yeah.
we're able to tap into those people to keep us going.
Yeah. No. Very good. Well, yeah, and I remember, like, it used to be, hey, if you wanted Cleveland plain dealer, you had to be up in the area to buy a
Yeah,
plain dealer. Now you can just, read us wherever. Uh, Terry, thank you so much for your time. I could
you're
sit here and
welcome,
talk to you
Chris.
for a long time, but I know both you and I have stuff going on. Where's the best place? I want you to plug your books. Where's the best place
Yeah,
to go if people want to read your books?
you go to terrypluto.com. That's the
Okay.
easiest place. Yeah, terrypluto.com. And, the new book is, or Terry Pluto book, all one word, Terry Pluto book. Um, but terrypluto.com is the easiest. And you can really just see what's there. And, latest book is Why Can't This Team Find a Quarterback, about the Browns. And then my last faith book is called The Man with the Sign, which is a collection of faith writing. That was about the guys on the corner. Do you give them money or not? That was one of the bigger ones I've written about, that kept bringing in all kinds of emails and text and things. Good idea, bad idea. What do you think? Or another one, I was surprised because I wrote about visiting someone's grave on the anniversary of their death. This lady Gloria was like a sister to my wife Roberta and I, and just kind of wrote, said, then I just kind of throw in, I don't know, just wanted, do you go to grave sites? Inundated hundreds of emails about this.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I did like 2 follow-ups on why, or I don't go, but I have this set up in my house, or I go there because it's quiet. So you don't know exactly what's going to hit. But what does this tell you? People are looking for, I would say, moral guidance or comfort in a world that feels upside down. And, or my friend said, it's going to be hard. Either way, you're going to go through it with God or without God, but it's hard.
I mean, I love talking sports with you. I could do on the grave 3 hours on that because
Yeah.
I lost my dad 10 years ago. He was a pastor, and I've never been to his gravesite. And
Yeah.
it's still the sorrow of losing him, but I think it's also just the thought of, hey, I believe in heaven. I believe that one
Right.
day we're going to be resurrected. So
I've been to my dad died in 98. I've been to his gravesite twice. I
wow,
think about him all
okay,
the time. But other people,
yeah,
um, it's different, and that's why. And some say I don't like the cemetery, but in my backyard I set up a little thing there, kind of like there.
oh,
I go out there and I'll sit and pray and just kind of think and meditate. I found it fascinating. It was, it's one of those where you fall into a subject. You had no clue that all these people are thinking about this stuff.
well, and obviously we all have jobs, so I got to write about silly pop culture,
Sure.
celebrities, and we got to write about sports. But I always think about when we get to heaven, God's not going to be like, hey, and about your Todd Monken take,
Yeah.
he's
Right.
more. If he's going to look at what you do, it's going to be more about, hey, how did you encourage somebody
Hmm.
for a faith column? So Yeah, very good. Well, Terry, thanks so much. Hang on for a
Okay.
second afterwards. And like I said, if you haven't already, give my page a like and subscribe. I know that's the way of doing it. There's ways you can also support my podcast. But again, my big work is with Terry with Cleveland.com. There's a link to look at my articles. And again, consider becoming a subscriber. This is what helps me and Terry keep doing the stuff that we're doing. Thanks again for listening. You have yourself a great day.